Hello, friends of the internet. Welcome to my first video. I'm just starting this channel and I don't really have anything prepared to say exactly. I'm just kind of winging it. I see a lot of these like draw with me type videos and I thought, why not put up a few of my own? So today we're going to be drawing Shayne, Ian, and Damien from Smosh, from New Smosh, not Anthony and Ian Smosh, but post-Anthony Smosh. And we're gonna draw them as ATLA characters. So if you just like drawing, if you just wanna watch, if you wanna say shitty things about my art, go for it. I don't really care. Any view is a good view, right? So yeah. Welcome to the channel. My name's Kim, and let's get started. So I'm starting off with big buff boy Shayne here, and I made Shayne an earthbender. Not because he's a Virgo, and it's kind of weird that I know that, but like, I just think he has a lot of earth energy to him. Like I don't know, maybe it's just because he's just sort of a muscly guy, but I feel like his body type is very in line with like a lot of body types that you see in the Earth Kingdom. Like, he's stocky, but not in a mean way stocky. He's just like, he's built like an earthbender. I don't know how else to put that without sounding rude, but he's built like an earthbender. And also, I think if there's any nation and where you can get away with just sort of yelling excessively, it's probably the Earth Kingdom. And I think that just really fits with his personality, if you know what I mean. So what I do with my line art, because I'm incredibly lazy, is I actually use the pen tool. And using the pen tool, you can essentially map out your line work, and then you go to paths, and then you can, like, it'll automatically fill that path for you. So I do a lot of my line work, actually I do basically all of my line work like that. It's only with like really small, fine details that I'll freehand it, just because I'm not really good at freehanding line work. And like I said, I'm too lazy to spend the time trying to improve that. So I just use the pen tool. Also, I apologize if you hear my cat or my AC or anything in the background. I'm still trying to work out the kinks with audio, but that's the problem for future me. Right now I'm just putting in his eyebrows. He's got a really nice, like, sort of, I don't know what you'd call that expression. Mischievous, maybe? A little bit? Sort of, kind of. Shayne was probably the hardest one to actually get all of the line work done for, just because his pose is probably the most dynamic of the three. And when you have like a lot of different sort of curves and edges and stuff like that, you kind of have to do your line work in pieces if you're using the pen tool, because you can't really overlap so much in line work unless you're doing it on a separate layer if you're using the pen tool. If you're just freehanding this, probably a lot easier, but again, I'm too lazy and not talented enough to do so. So yeah. And then I'm just adding all the little details, the little bandages or whatever that a lot of the characters in ATLA have as part of their outfits. And you can see my undersketch there. I tend to sketch everything in pencil first and then bring it into Photoshop, just because I feel like I get a better sense of the shape when I sketch things by hand versus sketching things in Photoshop. For some reason, I feel like I don't get a really good shape language. It just doesn't feel right to me. In fact, sometimes I will even like start a sketch in Photoshop and then trace over it with paper and pencil, finish the sketch on paper and pencil, and then bring it back into Photoshop, which sounds really crazy, and it is, but it's what works for me. Right now I'm using the Kyle brush pack, and this is one that you can get if you have like the Adobe Creative Cloud. It's all free. You can just download it. And the ones that I've really been loving are like the copier pack. So it looks like the texture of something that's been photocopied, which is surprisingly really, really nice. In the final, you don't really see it so much, but I think it looks good. I don't want things to look too flat. I'm gonna try my best to talk for an hour. Probably not gonna happen because I don't really know what to say, and I might speed this video up, but I also don't want it to be like too sped up just because I think it's a little hard to actually see what's going on when you do that. And also, I like to, you see, I just did it there. I like to move the screen up and down a lot. I don't know why I do that. It's something that I do. And when you speed up the footage, it's really disorienting, that word. It's very hard to watch because it just kind of looks like the screen is glitching. It's not, it's literally me just scrolling up and down on the screen. Oh, his lime green pants. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I've seen a picture of Shayne wearing like super bright green pants, or shorts, which was the inspiration for the outfit, because I thought, well, might as well sort of make it like something he would actually wear. So yeah, I thought, why not? Bright green shorts. 100% Shayne would be a part of the Earth Rumble, you know, that thing that Toph was in with the boulder and the Duke. No, not the Duke. Yeah, the Duke. Or Pipsqueak. No, it is the Duke. I can't. Fake fan. 100% he would be a part of that. And that was kind of the inspiration behind like the pose too. It just seems like a, you know, like a WWE sort of poster pose. Also, I recently found out that, well, okay, so I knew that the boulder was based off the rock, right? And so originally the creators had intended to have the rock come on and voice the character. And something happened where he couldn't do it. And so they got another wrestler who was a friend of the rock to come and voice the boulder, which I didn't know. I didn't realize that the voice of the boulder was another wrestler, which I think is, I like that attention to detail. There's a lot of voices in the show that actually are like really well-known people. For example, Zhao is voiced by Jason Isaacs, who is Lucius Malfoy, which is like, honestly, it's such good casting. It's such good casting, especially because you wouldn't think it was him because he's got this American accent, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that was a good choice. And like Mark Hamill and Grey Delisle and all them, I mean, obviously those were incredible casting choices, but it's like all the little side parts, like Serena Williams, I think, is also in the show. She plays Ming, the guard who helps Iroh escape from prison. Or not helps, but is kind to Iroh in prison. Now I'm just adding sort of the shading and detail to the hair. I go back and forth a lot with the way that I want certain things to look. Like you can see, I'll do something and I'll erase it because I don't like the way that it looks. I use the hue and saturation panel a lot because I'll put a color down, but I'm not really sure about that color, so I'll just go and use the sliders to adjust it until I get a color that I like, and it saves me the trouble of having to like think about what color exactly I want to put down, because I can always just go in and change it. Oh, also, I gave Shayne a mullet because I think, again, if there's any nation where you could get away with having a mullet, probably the Earth Kingdom. I don't think they would care that much, you know? Maybe the Water Tribe too, I could see that, but definitely the Earth Kingdom. And I didn't want to just give Shayne his regular hair. I wanted each Smosh member to have like some sort of alteration to their hair to make it seem a little bit more on theme for ATLA. But I like tried a bun and I tried all these other things and I didn't really like the way that it looked with the character. And so I thought, well, why not a mullet? And I actually think that's probably the best choice. And if Shayne was in fact in Avatar the Last Airbender, I would put money down on him having a mullet. Now I'm adding all my details, and this is where I'm going to talk about or show you like me using the hue/saturation sliders, because I put that green down, but I didn't really like it, and then I went in and I adjusted it. And now I like it, and I didn't have to redo it, which is nice. Sorry again for the sliding up and down, it's just the way that I work. I know it's super annoying. I'm gonna work on other Smosh members in the future. Like I want to do the ladies of Smosh, like Courtney and Kimmy and Olivia. I'm just starting with the boys because I don't know. I just felt like that was the inspiration that came to me. So just starting with the boys. I'd like to do like Spencer. I could definitely see Spencer as a swamp bender. Like there's something about his personality and his look that's very swamp bendery. I would love to do Keith almost as like a cross between Prince Wu from LOK and King Boomy, because that sort of like, you know, Keith is really stylish, and so there's a certain like opulence that I think the Earth Kingdom really imbues that would be fitting for Keith. Also, I'm not going by their zodiac signs, right? Because I think there's sort of a way of like, oh, you're this element because this is the element of your zodiac sign, right? Like I think Keith is a Scorpio or something, and so I could make him from the water tribe, but I don't really think that that's like where his personality and his style fits. I think he's more like Earth Kingdom. I'm also not too concerned with the like cleanliness of all of this in the end, because A, you're not going to be looking at it super up close, and B, like I don't want it to be like super, super flat. So I'm kind of okay if the line work isn't like super crisp and perfect. I mean, it is because of the pen tool, but in terms of like the texture of it, I'm okay if it looks kind of rough here and there. I think that's fine. Even with something that does look as clean as this, I think it's important to have some sort of texture. Otherwise, it really does look not even flat, but like unfinished. And that's just me checking my undersketching, which I just kind of did simple color blocking to begin with. Just to sort of see what color schemes would look best. I'm almost finished with Shayne. I'm just adding little details here. I'm kind of mimicking Toph's belt, because Toph has that dark green belt with like the little gold bolts on it. I don't know what exactly you'd call them, studs, which I thought would look good with his outfit. I kind of wanted to give him like the big wrestler belt, but you wouldn't really be able to see it from the way that he's posed, so I didn't really bother with it. So now I'm going in and doing some shadows. And it looks really icky to begin with, like that orange color is really gross, but I promise there is a method behind the madness, sort of. I actually don't really know what I'm doing half the time when I'm putting in this kind of detail. I just will lay some color down and sort of play with the like the layer opacities and the layer modes to see if I can get something that looks good. Again, using the hue/saturation to sort of adjust, and then changing the opacity to make it blend a little bit better. I don't know if other people do this. I'm sure that they do. I can't be the only one, but like, I feel like I haven't seen a lot of other artists sort of mess around with the hue and saturation panel as much as I feel like I do. Maybe it's just because I like watching the colors change. Now I'm sort of just adding like I don't know what you'd call this, like a haze to him, just to sort of give the character a little more depth so he doesn't, again, feel like very flat. And also doing so kind of ties in all the colors together, so it's not like pink skin and yellow hair and green clothes. There's sort of a diffuse color throughout. And so what was that kind of green color has now become sort of orange, but it sort of reads as like an olive green. And again, at this point, I'm just playing around. Like, I'm not really doing anything in particular. I'm just kind of trying to add like texture and something that makes it feel a little bit more intentional, I guess, with the way that I use the brushes. And I found this really great one, which I think is under the copier brush pack. It's like Add Noise or something like that. And I like the texture that it put on there. He's almost done. I'm just gonna add a few extra things. I'm gonna do some highlighting, clean up the edges a little bit, add the rocks. Adding toes, and I hate toes, and I hate feet, and I hate hands and fingers. Oh my god, I have many years of drawing under my belt, and my god, I do not know how to draw hands or feet. I should probably spend time learning how to do so, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Why can't people just have no feet? Or toes, or hands, or fingers? Like, why can't we all just have little nubs and we just walk around with our nub life so that I don't have to sit here and try to figure out how to make toes look okay? Like, they're barely even toes, they're literally lines. It just, I get very angry when I have to do feet and hands. You'll see with Ian that I basically cheated because I put his arms behind his back and he's wearing shoes, so I don't have to draw hands or feet for him. But yeah, I think a lot of artists kind of feel that way. It's a pain in the ass. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to draw hands. Nobody wants to draw feet. And if you're an artist who likes to draw hands and feet, you're wrong. You need help. Go get some therapy, because nobody should enjoy it. It's the worst part of drawing. All I want to do is the face and sometimes the body. And I definitely don't want to do hands and feet. So at this point, I am stroking the outside, and no, that's not dirty, how dare you, the outside of the image to kind of give it a little bit more oomph and make it stand out a little bit more, which is something I should have done when I did the initial line work, but I didn't. So when I went and I put, basically it's like a base layer of white to get the shape to actually do the stroking effect, all the other layers that had, like, you know, little bits that I didn't erase then got stroked too, which is fine. Like, it's easy to erase, but I should have done it in the beginning so that I wouldn't have to go back and erase all of the extra stuff at the end. Because Does any of that make sense? No? Great, got it. Now I am drawing the rocks. The rocks I've decided not to outline in any way because a lot of the time in the show, the elements themselves aren't really like outlined in the same way that the characters are. Same with the background, like most of the time the backgrounds are painted. And so I thought, I'll just leave it as unlined, just to kind of keep with the theme. Also, I didn't want to have to do the line work for those rocks because it would have been more complicated, especially if I was doing it with the pen tool, because there's a lot of different sort of angles, and the more angles you have, the more time, not difficult, but like time consuming it's gonna be. And ain't nobody got time for that. Nobody says that anymore. Did I just age myself by saying that? Probably did. I don't care, whatever. I'm 62, easily. Don't ask questions. Now I'm adding a little bit of highlight just to, again, make him pop a little bit more. Now I'm just kind of going back and checking my work, checking it from further back to see if it looks good. It looks fine. No complaints so far. I mean, there's always things that I would change to a drawing. I think everybody feels that way. But this is more for fun, so I'm not really gonna go out of my way to like make it perfect. I think it looks cute. 100% I could see Shayne wearing this, cosplaying at Comic-Con or whatever. Yeah. And there he is. There's Shayne. Shayne Robert Top. All right, now we're moving on to Ian. Ian, I made a firebender, and I just think he feels, or he sort of gives the vibe of a firebender, like kind of unpredictable, stoic, but can be very like unhinged at times. And if that isn't Ian, then I don't know what is. And of course I'm saying this like I know these people. I don't know these people. I just watch Smosh. Like I literally don't know. I could be completely wrong about their personalities, but this is just based off what I have seen from their online content. I also made Ian a non-bender. I was gonna give him a sword, but I forgot. Because I don't think he would be a bender. I think he's a little too practical to be a bender. Almost like Sokka. You know, like Sokka, if Sokka was a bender, I think his whole personality would be different. And so I didn't want to make Ian a bender. So he's kind of just like, I don't know, maybe he's a general or something, or some sort of nobleman or businessman. You know, the Fire Nation's going through an industrial revolution, so of course he's gonna be in charge of some sort of business like that, considering that he has built, you know, in part with Anthony, but, you know, continues to run one of the oldest YouTube channels and one of the most successful YouTube channels. And I'm just going in and doing all the pen tool stuff, getting his hair, getting the outline of his face. I struggled a lot with trying to draw Ian. Not to be mean, but he is very like generic white guy. So I didn't really know how to capture his essence so much. And I settled on this design. I think it looks fine. I think it makes the point. Shayne and Damien were a little bit easier, even though they are also like sort of, they're not generic white guys, but they're white guys. I think their faces are different enough that they look like two different people, even in like cartoon form. Whereas Ian, I was kind of struggling a little bit, but I'm happy with it now, like looking back and looking at the final project, or not the final project, the final picture, ugh. I think it looks good. I think it looks like Ian enough. The other issue with Ian is that he always wears glasses, and I didn't want to put glasses on the drawing, and I think that was what's kind of throwing me for a loop, was that most of the time he is wearing glasses, and I had to kind of figure out what his face looked like without them. Also, Ian and Ian and Damien are going to go by a lot quicker, just because the first drawing is always like trying to figure out what the style of the drawing is going to be, and like determining the brushes and sort of the layers. Whereas every drawing you do after that, you kind of remember what you did, and it just goes by so much quicker. And because Shayne was the most dynamic pose, like Ian and Damien, I probably took half the time to complete it than it did with Shayne. All of the really fine details I like to do by hand, because it just isn't worth the time and effort to do it with the pen tool. The pen tool is great for doing sort of larger line work, because I think it would be harder to do that freehand if you're not really good at doing freehand line work. But like all of the little details, like the ear and the sort of bends in the fabric on the arms, like it's just quicker to just sort of sketch that and kind of clean it up from there. I gave Ian those typical Fire Nation shoes with the little metal boot at the end, which I imagine if you walked a little too close to someone wearing those shoes and they sort of flat tired you, it would probably hurt like hell. So at this point, Ian is basically done with the line work. I mean, it's just a few little things here and there, but for the most part, he is pretty much done. And this is where I'm going in and I'm doing the stroke, and I'm erasing any little areas that got caught in that blend mode option, and so it's a nice clean outside. I know Ian isn't like super serious all the time, but when I think of him, he's kind of like the stoic dad in the Smosh family. And so that's why I made him like this. Like, I just feel like that's sort of his default, even though he can be like really crazy and wild and goofy. I just thought that this was a good fit for him. This pose, this face feels very Ian. Again, I don't know any of these people personally. I'm just saying, from what I've gathered from watching them, this is how I feel. And now the fun part, which is coloring. I love doing the coloring. The line work is probably the most boring part for me. It's just, cleaning up your work and making it look nice. It's when I get to actually go in and color and decide what the outfit's gonna look like and do the hair. That's the fun part. I don't know about all of you, but I am very nervous and sort of begrudgingly excited for the live action Avatar because I really, really love who they've been casting, like Paul Sung Lee for Uncle Iroh, who played the dad in Kim's Convenience. It's like such a good, that's such good casting. It's so good. And like Daniel Day Kim as Fire Lord Ozai, like, yeah, come on, that's incredible casting. But I am very wary of the show because Brian and Mike did leave the production of it. And that to me screams that it's gonna be kind of a shit show. Even though the casting is so good, the fact that the creators basically said, you guys are doing something with this vision that we don't approve of is really upsetting. And so I really want to watch it, but I'm very aware of the fact that like it's not blessed by Mike and Brian. And so do I even want to give them any of my watch time? Because it isn't something that Mike and Brian have like sanctioned as holy and canon to the Avatar universe. You know, like with the comics with Dark Horse and Gene Luen Yang, like they worked with him and they have a good relationship with him. And so those comics felt like authentic to the series, which they are 100% canon. But knowing that like, yes, Mike and Brian have signed off on this made it even better. Versus now this Netflix show, it's kind of like, well, Mike and Brian started with them, but then Netflix was doing stuff that they didn't like. And so Mike and Brian have left. And now we're kind of left with this really like incredible cast, but then is the writing and the plot and the vibe of the show gonna be really bad? All right, so Ian's got his flat colors on. I chose this kind of red and gray combo because I feel like I've seen him wear red and gray. I think there's like a pair of shoes that he has that's like red and gray. And I thought that it would just work well for his color scheme. Now I'm just adding like the little Fire Nation frills, not really frills, but the sort of motifs onto his tunic. I'm sorry for sliding again. That's just me being like that. So here I was trying to do the Smosh logo and like trying to make it part of the motif of the outfit. I probably should have looked at a reference of the Smosh logo before I did that because it's not quite correct, but I thought it'd be a nice little sneaky detail. Although in the end, you can barely see it because of all the other layers that I've put on. It's not super visible, but just know that I was trying to put the Smosh logo somewhere onto Ian. Also, the reason I'm sliding back and forth between Shayne and Ian is to check that like the style is matching. Because I do remember the majority of the brushes that I use, but I actually started Ian on a different day, and so I kind of had to think back and be like, oh yeah, I used that brush at this point and this brush at that point. And it's not a perfect match, but it's close enough. I mean, they still look like they're part of the same lineup of characters. I used to write the brushes that I used on the document itself. That way I always knew. But then that kind of gets a little anal sometimes because I'll go back and forth between so many different brushes, and then I'll test brushes in between too, and it ended up just me writing like all of these different brushes all over the document, and it just looked really bad, and I never really remembered to use them anyway. I'd be like, actually I don't want to use that one, I want to use this one instead. So I kind of stopped doing that. But I think if you are concerned about not remembering what brushes you used, you can do that. I think there's also a way to like save a certain set of brushes in Photoshop itself and like make a folder for it. I just have not sat down to figure that out, nor will I, because I cannot be bothered to spend any more time figuring out Photoshop than what I already know. Adding some more detail here, trying to make the outfit look a little less flat. I keep using the word flat. That's not a good adjective. Boring isn't a good adjective either. I don't know what I'm trying to say. All right, I paused for a moment, but we are back to Ian. Yeah, I'm still playing around with doing the shading and getting some of the hair texture into him. In the end, you don't really see it so much, but it's okay. It's fine. It made me feel better about the direction I was going in the moment. And so we're just going to leave it at that. It's okay to sort of let certain things go with your art at times, even though it's hard. Even though it's really hard sometimes to let go of things that you want to do with your characters, but you just have to do it for the sake of visual interest. Now I'm adding the shadows to him. I'm sorry, I'll stop saying I keep saying because I don't actually know what to say. How do people do this? How do people talk for so long? I know with some of those draw with me videos, they're talking about like internet drama or whatever, but I don't really feel like I need to go over anything. Also, I don't know enough about internet drama currently to give you sort of any information. I only know about Smosh, Avatar, and how I draw in Photoshop. And that's literally all we're gonna talk about. I forgot to mention this, but Ian is kind of inspired by Master Piandao, if that makes sense. Hence why I wanted to give him a sword in the beginning. I just didn't want to draw a sword. Sorry, Ian. But I thought that was probably a good comparison because Master Piandao is like kind of a dick in his first episode, right? He's kind of a dick towards Sokka, but he's actually like really well intentioned. And also the fact that he's part of the White Lotus, I think really fits with Ian too, kind of going back to that like all-knowing grandfather of YouTube sort of thing that he has going on. And maybe that's a gross sort of exaggeration of his role, but I thought it would be a funny comparison to like say that the White Lotus is akin to all these really old school YouTubers. I'm still just playing around with the colors here, trying to get the right sort of shading on him. Now I'm going in with a very bright purple to put texture in, but it's all intentional. Like I knew that was probably the route that I was going to go with adding purple or something that was sort of cooler than the red, because if you just sort of add red on top of red on top of red, it's fine, but it again will become very monotone and sort of one note. Whereas if you're adding a color that's not exactly the opposite, but not exactly like analogous to whatever the current color scheme is, I just think it helps sort of give the image a little bit more dimension. And take everything I say with a grain of salt. Like literally, I'm just some person on the internet who is drawing. Like, I'm not a professional artist by any means. Like, I'm not some master of digital art. I like making pretty pictures. That's all. Like, you don't have to listen to anything I say or take any of my advice. Like, I'm just spewing out my process. And yeah, basically at this point, Ian is done. I'm going to get a background behind him like I have with Shayne, and I'm just copying Shayne's background and then going into my hue slider and adjusting it and making it fit, choosing a color that is in the same color scheme as his outfit, but different enough that he still pops. And you can see here where I have like sort of extra shadow and highlight sticking out from the silhouette itself. To get rid of that, I go back into the layers, I find the base layer that has the stroking on it, and I select inverse and then go back to the layers that are outside of the line work and delete. I'm sure there's probably a better way to do all of this. I just don't know it, and this is what works for me. And there you have it. There is Ian of the Fire Nation. All right, now we're on to Damien. Damien is 100% a waterbender. You cannot tell me any different. He did like do a Sokka cosplay, I think, when he had his long hair and had like a little warrior's wolf tail. Is that what it is? So I thought, you know what, we're just gonna go with that. We're gonna go with waterbender Damien. And I didn't mean to do this, but somehow they're all sort of wearing very similar outfits. It's this really broad-shouldered, muscle tee tunic type thing. It's fine. I could have spent more time sort of making the outfits look a little bit more different, but they're all from different nations. It's fine. So again, going in with the pen tool, getting sort of the basic outline, checking my undersketch just to make sure that that's what the shape is, and then going in and erasing certain parts, like where the sort of, I don't want to say crotch flap, but like the front flap of the tunic is, like erasing that line there. Now I'm going in and doing the arms. The arms are actually pretty easy because the shape is relatively simple. It's kind of where the fingers and the hands are where things get complicated. I also don't like the way I have the hands posed for Damien, but as I mentioned earlier, I don't like hands, and I don't like feet, and I don't like fingers, and I don't like toes. So we're gonna leave it because I'm too lazy to change it. I'm sorry for all the screen glitchiness. Again, it's not the screen glitching itself, it's just me being weird and having to like scroll up and down and check and go back and check and go back and check. And then I'm just erasing all of the overlap there, getting rid of that, cleaning up the area where his hair is going to be. Also, we're doing purple haired Damien, which is the most current form of Damien. I actually really like the purple hair. He's done blue hair a lot, Nothing wrong with the blue hair, but I actually think the purple hair feels more Damien than the blue hair. Don't come at me, Smosh fans, for saying that. My favorite color is purple, so I guess I'm a little bit biased, but we're doing purple hair Damien, because why not? Purple is very much a color between like the Water Tribe and the Fire Nation, right? There's all these sort of half colors that the nations share. Like Kyoshi Island, like the people there, they wear blue, but they're technically part of the Earth Kingdom, but they're close enough to the Water Tribe that they're wearing blue. Like, I think it's fine for Damien to be a purple waterbender boy. Again, me just going back and checking between Shayne and Damien, just to make sure that we're kind of in the same line weight, that the texture seems right, all that fun stuff. Yep, looks good, okay. Doing his feats now. Again, I cheated, not cheated, but I lucked out with having Damien have boots on, because then no feet and no toes, and that's what I want. No feet, no toes. We're an anti-feet, anti-hands, anti-toes, anti-fingers household. Thank you very much. And then I thought that the angle of the foot looked weird, and so I tried to sort of do it differently, and then it looked weirder to me, so I went back to the original. I still think it looks kind of weird, but again, this is kind of just for fun, so I don't really care if it's perfect or not. Now we got the crotch flap. It's not a crotch flap. I shouldn't call it that, but it's like, I mean, it kind of is. It kind of is just this little flap that hangs down in front. I know it's actually part of the tunic itself. Like, I think, I don't know, there's some like behind the scenes book or like art book or something that showed sort of the original sketches for a lot of the characters. And I think there was a sort of sketch that showed like what the tunic actually looks like and how it wraps around. And it's like the top vest part and the flap are all one piece, basically. But we're just gonna call it the crotch flap. I don't know. So Damien's line work is almost done at this point. I'm just doing his face, his nose, his eyebrows. Shayne is the only one that has colored eyebrows, actually. Damien and Ian both have just black eyebrows. I decided I didn't like his nose. Something about the nose didn't feel right to me. I think Damien has a very cute nose. Like, it's a very, I don't know, it's a good nose. I shouldn't say that there are bad noses. That's not what I'm implying. There are no bad noses, but he's got a very like sharp nose. And I think it works really well for a character design, because it is very like typical cartoon character, sort of pointy nose. And yeah, there you go. Line work for Damien is basically all done. All right, and I checked to see Ian is still there. Very good. So that moment where the whole thing went black, basically that's what I mean when I say like I'm putting a flat sort of solid shape behind the line work that I've done in order to create the stroke around the figure. So what I'll do is I'll create the line work, and then I'll select the outside of the line work. I'll invert the selection. I'll put white just with the fill bucket down, and then with that shape I will go into the blending mode and choose stroke, and that is what gives me that thick outer layer. Not outer layer, but the thicker line around the entire image itself. And I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but that's what works for me. That's the way I've been doing it for years. So that's my sort of process. And the nice thing is too, is when you do that, you then, if you like move your image around, like say you put it onto, like you delete the background, you still have a completely opaque image and it's not transparent just because you were working on a white background, but you didn't actually fill it in. If that makes sense. Now I'm adding the color, the purple hair, the pale skin. I love you, Damien, but like, boy, you're pale. You're so pale. Oh my God. So we're gonna make him a pale boy. And you know what? He lives in the water tribe. So I think being pale is okay because probably not getting a whole lot of sun. And I'm actually doing something with Damien that I should have done with the other two, in which is I have like the selection on so that I'm not coloring outside of the lines, which saves me a lot of time trying to erase later. And I should have done that with the other two, but I just forgot, and then I was too committed to the bit. For Damien, I chose sort of a bluish purple. Like I didn't want him to go full on purple, but I didn't want him to be like blue. So it's kind of an indigo, if you will. Like an indigo and a midnight blue and some plum accents. You want to give those colors fancy names. And some periwinkle now. Is periwinkle blue or purple? I maintain that periwinkle is purple, but my sister thinks that periwinkle is like bluish. She had a vision for her wedding where she wanted all of this like periwinkle color, and we didn't really get a periwinkle. It was like sky blue and lavender sort of accents, and I kept telling her that like that periwinkle was more of a purple than it was a blue. And I don't know. Basically what happened, just as a fun sort of side story, she ordered these lanterns from Oriental Trading, and she was like, oh yeah, they're periwinkle. And I was looking on the website and I was like, no, they're blue. Like they look blue. She goes, no, they're periwinkle though. And I said, fine, whatever. You know what? Order the lanterns. And then we got them and they were blue. And we hung them from the tent where her reception was being held. And you just look up and you just see all these blue balls hanging from the ceiling. Which, yeah, that was certainly an aesthetic. That was a choice. Good times. Anyway, sorry for that little tangent. Back to Damien. We're putting in some sort of water tribe motifs with the little triangles. Now I'm going to mess around with his hair and just give it a little more movement, make it look a little less one note. In the end, I don't think you can really tell, but it's fine. Oh, also I gave Damien chest hair, and I'm not trying to be creepy about it. I just thought it would be a nice touch, I guess. I don't know. I just didn't want to leave that area blank, and I thought about putting in a necklace, but then I didn't really like the way that looked, so I just left it with chest hair. And now I'm adding some blue on top to kind of make it one color, although I think I ended up changing that because it didn't. Oh no, I kept it, but I messed around with the layer mode to kind of make it seem a little bit less intense. I didn't want him to look like he had basically become hypothermic. That's what I'm trying to say. Now I'm going back and I'm finding my noise brush, I think. And I'm going through and I'm gonna... Oh no, I am doing the shadow. Haha, just kidding. I'm adding shadow to Damien. And I'm trying to figure out what the best blend mode is. I will admit that I'm not great at lighting. Like, I don't really understand. Not that I don't understand, but I'm not great at sort of getting the right shadows and the right highlights in places. But I try my best, and I think it looks okay in the end. I technically should have put that one side of the face with that one eye in complete shadow, but I just thought that it looked weird considering that neither Shayne nor Ian had like a shadow like that on their face, so I kind of left it. And looking back at Shayne and kind of making sure that they look similar enough. Adding a little extra detail there on the trim of the tunic vest thing. Now I'm going in with the noise and I'm adding that texture. So you can see I started off with like that turquoise color, but eventually settled on something that was kind of more like a mauve or mauve. I think it's mauve. Now I'm going in and doing the highlights. Again, I'm sorry for the silence. Like, I don't know what to say. It's just waiting around for me to get on to the next step before I can sort of explain myself. Here's a fun question for anybody watching this. Comment below if you think Damien would be from the Northern Water Tribe or the Southern Water Tribe. I personally think Southern. I just think that he feels a little more like down to earth, and I think the Northern Water Tribe is a little bit more uptight and hoity-toity and high society. Not that Damien couldn't be a fancy boy, but I think the Southern Water Tribe is probably more in line with his personality. And there's Ian again. Yes, so now I am sort of getting Damien set up for his background, copying Ian's background, and just manipulating it to fit Damien. I actually had a really hard time choosing the background color for Damien because if I felt like no matter what color I chose, he didn't quite stand out enough. Eventually I settled on this kind of blue and I turned up the saturation on it. And now you get to see me struggle to do his shadow. I started doing like 2 different shadows, so 1 on each foot, but it just didn't look right. And so I decided to scrap that, and then you'll see in a second here, I just do 1 long shadow between his 2 feet, which looks better to me, but also sort of looks like he's surfing on a shortboard, which is fine. I mean, he's from the water tribe, right? So yeah, he probably surfs. And to do the shadow, I'm just using the elliptical tool and filling it in with the paint bucket. And there's Damien! The last thing I need to do for Damien is make the water that he's bending. And that took me surprisingly longer than I would like to admit. I thought I'd be really quick with it, but I don't know, I didn't like the shape of it too much, so I had to keep like going in and erasing and then going back and doing all this stuff. And then I realized that I did the water on the wrong layers, so then I'd go back and redraw it and all that fun stuff. I guess I didn't have to redraw it. I could have selected it and then cut it from the layer, but I went and redrew it. Haha, English? Again, playing around with the color because I don't want it to match the background too much, but I also don't want it to be the same color as Damien. It's kind of finding that perfect blue that stands out enough but isn't too similar. Now I'm just kind of looking at the water and seeing where I can improve, and or telling my cat to stop scratching my bed. That's probably also why I'm not doing anything on the screen currently. Now I'm going in and adding some highlights. Took me forever to get that one little highlight. I still don't love it, but I think it's fine. I'm almost done. I'm so close to being done. In total, this probably took me maybe 3 days to do everything, and not working consecutively, obviously. In total, it was probably like 3-ish hours from start to finish, so not too bad. And of course this is all sped up, so it's only ending up about like an hour. Oh, here's where I should probably cut that part out. Anyway, I like twisted the screen in a weird way and I couldn't figure out how to undo that, so I just closed Photoshop and opened it up again. Ha, sorry. And there you go. There is Damien, Shayne, and Ian from Smosh as ATLA characters. Ta-da! And then here's them with like a little bit more finished detail. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Thank you for coming to my channel. If you like what you watched, please hit that subscribe button. I'd love to be able to have a community here on YouTube. That'd be really fun. I will be posting more videos in the future. So yeah, come on by and come on back. Bye guys.